You all set?
609. Yep.
Welcome back. Here we are, man.
Here we are, dude. It's August 18th, the year 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 609.
Yes, it is. And I'll tell you what, it's going good.
It is. It's going good. It's a beautiful day here in Overland Park, Kansas. How are things treating you? Getting some fall weather up there in Beloit?
Oh yeah, beautiful, man. It's outstanding.
Are you rocking like
living
a long
in San Diego? What's that?
It's San Diego-esque. Are you rocking like a long sleeve shirt in the mornings already?
Yeah, I bring a light hoodie out when I'm sitting on the patio.
Christ.
And it's not really that cold, but I kind of just like putting it on, you know?
We walked school yesterday to pick up Hayden, and it was like mid 70s, and I saw two ladies with a pullover on. I'm like, okay, I know we're all excited for a little bit cooler weather here, but let's not jump the gun. I mean, no one's more ready for fall weather and football than this guy, but I mean, let's pump the brakes. We know we're due for at least 1 or 2 more weeks of solid summer heat and temp. So, buddy, you know what? Enjoy it while you can. And we hope you enjoy this podcast while you can. This is if it's your first time tuning in. Welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, and your time is very valuable. So we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We'll do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps. We'll also do some race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, both as human beings, but coaches and athletes ourselves. And we oftentimes will also talk a lot about what our athletes are going through. Mike and I both work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at their very first 5K or sprint, all the way up through athletes looking to get back to Kona, and everyone in between from all over. And we use the feedback loop we have with them, training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also frequently utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group, and answer one simple question, and we'll let you in. Great community, awesome people, and getting a lot more lively now that we are end of August. Always, seems to be kind of a peak in communication and posts and answers and race jitters and the like. So be a part of it. Don't be a lurker. Participate. Everyone has something of value to add. And if you have a question that you think is ridiculous, I guarantee you at least 50 more people are thinking the same thing, or you'll find another 100 that I never thought of that, and now you've answered it. So be a part of it, and we'll go in there sometimes, do a Q&A, and post that. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy on your endurance sports journey.
Yep. It is a lively group right now. We had 41 people join the last week.
Yeah,
I was like, man, that is huge.
Either we're picking up steam, or Facebook did another algorithm where they suggested Crushing Iron Facebook group to, a bunch of random triathletes because you thought the word triathlon and your phone picked up on it. It was like, what we're going to do? We're going to drive you to the Crushing Iron podcast Facebook group. And then here you are.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, speaking of hoodies too, man, when we lived in Chattanooga, there was times during the year where I'd get up and it'd be like September, October or something sometimes. And be like, it's probably hoodie wear. I wouldn't even check. I'd just walk out, put a hoodie on. I'm like just so Jones, and get out there, and I'd be like, nope.
Yep.
Just baking, man.
I do. I remember one day you came down in the hoodie, and I think it was maybe October. And I was like, dude, I was like, it's 95 outside. You're like, yeah, I didn't really look at the weather, just kind of feeling like the hoodie weather. And then you're just kind of dying a slow death because it is just way too hot. Listen, even like mid-October, it can stay pretty steamy. But yeah, it's listen, everyone wants it. Everyone's looking forward to it. A little bit cooler temp. So, hey, we're all due for some more heat, which is fine with me. But there's nothing wrong with enjoying a little bit of the fall weather. I mean, last night we were at Hayden's first baseball game underneath like a little shelter thing underneath the bleachers. It's got like full on shade. I'm all in with this. And then a nice little breeze. I was like, man, this is the ticket right here. This is the ticket. It felt great and made the herding, what looked like, herding cats of a, first grade baseball game, a lot more tolerable. So yeah, it's enjoyable. Race season upon us. For most of us, you're excited. For some of us, some of you, you're in a funk. You're in a big funk. And Mike and I's job today will be to try and do our best to get you out of that funk.
Well, I guess we're up for it, man.
Yeah, we up for it. I mean, you and I both. I mean, you're back at it with the blog. It's making a comeback. Don't call it a comeback. It's always been around, but it's back. You've been journaling and writing a lot and being a lot more communicative in your feelings and your thought process and what's going on in your own training now that you're fully committed to Ironman Wisconsin, which I think is awesome. I think people should do that more often. It's just really great and always good for people to see what other people are going through and thinking and how things are going, because it's all about learning, right? Learning and developing. But you even, reading your blog post, you talked about, you and I had very similar, along the same lines. We both left Chattanooga and moved different states, different cities, kind of an upheaval. And we're kind of both in a funk, but you have, both of us, but you have seemed to kind of get out of your funk. So have I. And so I thought, that's kind of going through training peaks. And it's a hard time of year for a lot of people. I mean, listen, every month has a hard time of year for somebody. So I say that, but it's true. Some people are in the creme de la creme of their season right now, and they are loving life and enjoying everything. And some people are just counting the days, right? Their training is over with, the race is coming, and they want to be over with it and done. And they're wondering why they ever got themselves signed up for this race. Other people are kind of flailing in the wind, right? With no direction, no purpose, no why, forcing their way through workouts and then skipping a week and then taking on more and just kind of wondering, where's the love, right? Where's your why? Where's the motivation that you so once, readily had on a day-to-day basis when you were training for your first full or your first triathlon or you first got in the sport and everything was new and fun and exciting. And now you're like, why can't I just get my shit together? Or I'm waking up and I just don't feel like doing anything. And I'm in a huge funk and I can't figure out why. And so I think, like I texted you earlier from two guys who are in, post-funk recovery, and kind of got back in the swing of things. Maybe we could each share some things that helped us kind of get out of a funk of and to be honest with you, a lot of them might not be just training related. It'll be, kind of doing some house cleaning, in terms of clearing a path to give you a better opportunity to be successful, because a lot of times people are in a funk because other things in their life aren't necessarily shining a bright light on what they're doing and how they're feeling. And they really lean on triathlon, honestly, a little bit too hard, right? And you put too much stock in your training and your racing to deliver an irresponsible amount of happiness in return. And then when it's gone or you can't do it, you wonder why you're, depressed or in a funk or you can't get any motivation. So hopefully we can share some of those tips. And for those of you that are in a funk or been in a funk or maybe headed that direction, we can help steer you clear and get you back on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things with a lot of fulls coming up in the fall, and you talked about that last time, and I've always thought about Ironman as sort of the elephant in the room of our lives. It's kind of like we sign up, there's an exciting phase, and then we kind of start training and we feel good about it. And then, like you said, I mean, now I did my second post I've been posting on CrushingIron.com, the original blog page, but I was talking about it today, man. It's like, 24 days is kind of quick. And now,
yeah. You kind of spooked me. You wrote 25 days and I'm only doing the 70.3. And I was like, what?
Right.
25 days? I feel like I have longer than that. So yeah, now I'm feeling a little bit of pressure.
So yeah, I feel like once you get, there's like stages of training, you're kind of just in the training, it's still way out there or whatever. And as it gets closer, it kind of starts taking up more real estate in your brain. Right. And it's harder to kind of just take the day in the moment, but when you're under a month, it's just sitting there and it's sort of like this kind of confusing thing of, I just want to kind of get there and get it over with, but no, I need to still do some work, but it's difficult to, stay focused in the day that you're in. And I just think it it's one of those things that I try to work on all the time is like, because, you know, you think about, when I think about the race, I just think, like I was saying the other day in that post, is like, I think about my arms and my ass on that bike ride. It's like, how do I get my head wrapped around that, you know, because you know your body's sitting there and it subconsciously knows, I think, that you're about ready to put it through a shitstorm. And I just think that kind of weighs on you. It's sort of this unknown, you know. I think that's kind of why, in a weird way, I got in a funk when I left Chattanooga, is because I was just so unsettled. I didn't know what was coming. The house is getting built and all these sorts of things. You just don't know what's going on. And really, the only remedy I have for that is just to draw yourself back to what you're doing and, you know, focus on breath and be in the moment and that sort of thing. And then that's why I started writing again, I think, because it's always sort of my therapy. And it kind of takes you out of that unknown place, and it makes you formulate thoughts of construction as you move toward it. So for me, that's the thing, is like, I always feel like I'm just kind of, I don't know, vaguely aware of what's going on, and I haven't really addressed it. And I'm kind of just wallowing in the weirdness of knowing I have a big race out there. But, you know, once you kind of drag it back into what you're doing exactly today, that's what makes it easier for me.
Right.
Because it's like 24 days out, and that feels really close, but that's still all, 24 days you got to kind of work on things, get your head straight, and do all these kind of things instead of, flipping the panic mode switch already.
I think our use of time, or how we reference dates, is so incredibly complicated, and also puts so much pressure on athletes that it really is a huge part of why some people stay in a funk. Because listen, like we all sign up for races. I was having a phone call with an athlete earlier this week who was signed up for Ironman Chattanooga. At that time, life was pretty chill, job was pretty stable, and fast forward, to, now, and he's married and he's got some stepkids in the house. His job is different. And he's like, yeah, I just can't figure out why, I'm like, hello, like things are totally different. Like you're everything changes, but you see this date on the calendar, and what happens is people, again, and it's very, very common with a lot of athletes, as you see a date, right? So you're saying, we're using 24 days on the calendar left. You're like, God, I've got to get my shit together in the next 24 days. That's a lot of pressure, right? From a person going from, if you're in a funk, right? Like, and we're using our date for Wisconsin 70.3 in the full is kind of just an example. Yours might be Ironman Florida. Yours might be Ironman Arizona. It might be Atlantic City 70.3. It might just be a sprint distance in a year, right? But what happens is when you're in a funk, right? You aren't creating any positive momentum, right? You're not checking boxes. You don't see hope, right? You don't feel positive, right? You're not optimistic. You're everything opposite of that, right? That is negative. That is no motivation, which is, low accountability, low energy levels probably. And then you see this date on the calendar, you're like, all right, I've got to get my act together before then. Who says you have to get it totally together before then?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of athletes, well, I want to do really, really well at this race, so I've got to do it now. That is, for most people, that's a giant turnoff, right? To their mind and their body, like, whoa. I'm going from like sedentary to no motivation. Now you're asking me to basically like switch my, flip my switch and train like a pro. No, I can't do that. Right. And you're going to, whether you recognize it or consciously or not, you are going to revolt and rebel against that ultimatum. Right. It's like the same thing when I always get really skittish and bring it up when you see athletes like put like weight loss on their training piece calendar. Like, I want to lose, 30 pounds by this date. You're like, man, those are two really concrete things, expectations and goals you're giving yourself. There's not much flexibility. And then, you get closer to time and you're like, oh my gosh, like I've got to make it. So you crash diet, right? You don't eat as much as you should. You underfuel, but you're losing weight. I'm getting closer to my goal. And then two things happen. One, you get so close to the goal, you don't hit it. You're demoralized. You're like, but I did so much. And then you just, you go back and you eat like shit again. You put your weight back on, right? Or you succeed and you hit it, but then you realize that what you're doing is not sustainable. and then you put the weight back on anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these dates on the calendar, a huge, one thing that I know for me that was helpful in getting my I guess my mojo back for training was looking at Wisconsin 70.3 not as a date on the calendar, but a part of the process moving forward, right? As a stepping stone, not as the end, right? Not as the end goal or the final destination, but more of a pit stop. And what that did was into having a better racing year and being more physically fit and be able to perform better in 2023. I just kind of said, all right, you're in pretty good shape before your move, so you're not, all isn't lost, and you went through a move which is super stressful. You got a kid home for the summer, all these things, kind of, so it's justifiable, right? So instead of looking at the calendar and be like, all right, well, in order to PR, I'm going to have to do this, this, and this, this, and this. And while you might write it and you might semi-believe it, most of you already know, guess what? That's totally not going to happen, right? Like, I'm totally overshooting. What I'm saying right now is not realistic at all. I really kind of know this, but I'm going to say it anyway, in hopes that I kind of fake believe it and see if I can get my act together. But what it does, it just increases this giant level of expectations. That's just too much pressure. And so I just say, you know what? I want to kind of try some things out, experiment a little bit with myself as an athlete and see what I can do. And then just frankly, and I think I wrote this maybe in reference to earlier this week, is just, I just want to get back in the game. I want to get back in the game and back in the groove of swim, bike, and run, as, it's already my job, right? And basically encompasses all 24 hours of my day, except when I'm sleeping, with the podcast and Zoom calls and text messages and training peaks and coaching athletes. It's all there. But I wanted that piece back for myself and said, well, what better way to do it than to head back to Wisconsin and just try to get back in shape and learn to enjoy things for what they are again. Don't expect to have this PR, but use it as a stepping stone for the next thing and a learning experience, right? And to find out what works and what doesn't. But but removing that expectation and looking at it as more of like, hey, I don't want to end the year on it with this great result. I want this just to be this, infinite span of time where I'm now progressing more than I was 2 months ago. So am I fitter and healthier than I was a month ago? Yes. And to me, that's the win, right? I don't have to basically get everything back in 2 seconds. I just need to get back and get healthy, and then let those months turn into 6 months, 8 months to a year, maybe 2. Who knows? But so removing that from me was a big turning point. And again, I think a lot of athletes really fall into that trap of condensing the time that they have into, and I think we even have a podcast, about using a race dates as expiration dates, right? They're not. Like, you continue to do things. You're just adding more pressure, more expectations, and it usually doesn't, get you more motivated. It usually just crushes your soul.
Man, I love what you said there about races. You're looking at the race as part of the process, because it's so damn easy, man, to, like, every time you go into a race, I mean, I think 99% of the people do it. They know their PR and they're looking at this next race with a PR, and then you're behind the 8 ball and you're like, how can I hack my way into a new PR for this race? And then it just becomes, you're not seeing it, like you said the other day, you had just probably the worst run of the year, or one of them, for yourself. And of course, in the synergistic world that you and I live in, I went out yesterday and had a kind of awful run. It wasn't awful, but it's sort of this, how it goes, an hour and a half run, and then I'm done, and I'm like, yeah, I could keep going, but boy, I didn't even bike or swim. How in the hell am I going to run a marathon? You kind of get that mindset every time you go to a workout, and it's not like that, man. It is, and it's back to what we said last, it's the sum of all the days, and it's just hard to keep that in mind. And I went after that run, I kind of jumped in the pool and dude, for easy 2000, and it kind of wiped me a little bit. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of weird, because I felt so great 2 days ago. And it just sort of happens, up and downs and whatever. And there's usually probably reasons. But one of the things I was thinking when I was swimming was, kind of, how you have these like, oh shit, I started thinking about how much you actually have to sight when you're in a race, and how little we sight in the pool. So I created a new rule for myself. I said, all right, I'm going to sight every length, just once. whenever, no big deal, but just kind of start building that habit. And it actually worked good, but then I was like, well, maybe once a lap is enough for now, because it started seeming like a lot of sighting in a pool. But to me, that was a manageable thing. And I think it's not a bad idea to start just kind of working that out. And like you're saying, man, when I don't know, it was probably a month ago when I, in earnest, really started, a little over a month, but I turned up the plan. I put my trainer out in the garage at my mom's house, and I got on for a, stellar 130 trainer ride. And I committed to doing trainers because to me, if I had to think about finding routes around here and, like the whole, you know how that goes, bottles and nutrition and stuff. So I just committed to the trainer. But one of the byproducts of that was I set the trainer up in the garage and I didn't realize it, but my mom had like a mirror on the wall and I had my shirt off and I was like, you know how you lean over and you get that belly kind of creeps over there.
Everybody knows. Yep, I know.
Like, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. And then I look over and I'm like, whoa, that's a problem. And so, but, you want it gone tomorrow, right? But
right.
I've been, I guess it's been about 5 weeks since then, and it's making it a little way out, feeling pretty good about it. But it's difficult, I think, to stay in the day like that and realize that stuff takes time and like you said, the giant expectations and how that puts so much pressure on us, and I just think that boils under the surface all the time if we're thinking about just crushing this race or whatever. And it's so much easier to go into it with the idea that it is just part of the process. And, with you and I, there is a whole nother element there because, a lot of people are listening to this podcast, like 20 or 30 people, and they're going to be watching, we know they're going to be tracking and these, you know what I mean? Like, I try to deny that, but, there's part of me that's motivated by it too, but I try not to let that affect me too much. But it's different, and like we always say, nobody really cares about how your race goes. They just kind of, I mean, it doesn't matter who. And I suppose, in our situation, we just kind of want to show, pretty well because, we're out here talking about it all the time, but we struggle just like everybody else, human, suffering and struggles and funks and the whole 9 yards. And we're all trying to figure out with you guys.
Yeah, and just getting back at it, right? And not staying, everyone gets in a funk, I think, but you don't want to stay in it forever, right? So you got to be proactive. And one of the things, and I know you're the same way, in many respects, is is to stop overcomplicating things. And that's like one of the main things I see with athletes when they get in a funk. They're like, all right, I can't do the most simplest of tasks, right? I can't go out for a 30-minute run today. How can I complicate my next week to make it so stimulating that it'll make me want to do it, right? So confusing, so complicated. I'm going to try this new method that I read because, this guy article that I read, this one guy on the planet did it and he had great. And so I'm going to give up all carbs, right? I'm like, I have no carbs, no dairy. I'm going to go straight, straight meat eater. And I'm gonna give up total like zone 2, waste of time, right? That doesn't do anything for me. I gotta be pumped. I gotta be excited. So I'm gonna do high intensity interval training for every single session. I can get away with 2 runs a week, but I'm gonna ride 19 times next week to really just kind of like bump things up and stimulate things, and then go to pull over. That's what I'm gonna do. And you're like, what? Like, if you can't do the most basic of tasks and the basic of, requirements to be consistent, then stop overcomplicating things to fool yourself into to being committed finally, right? Because we do this all the time. All triathletes swing to the total other end of the pendulum, right? There isn't very few athletes have like a happy medium. Let's see, one Ironman that was, not super satisfying. How about 2? All right, how about 3? How about the triple Ironman? Like, when's it ever going to end? And then what's going to happen when there is an end, right? How are you going to feel? What sport are you going to have? Most of the answers can find, like, if you can't do the simplest of tasks and of the most consistent, repeatable things, then you can't effectively conquer the most complicated, right? And that's like, and as a coach, I know you probably struggle with this too, is like when I write my own plan, sometimes like, all right, you're coaching so many other people, and you're like, this is working for them. I wonder if it'll work for me. This is working for them. I wonder if it'll work for me. And then you're reading new articles or blogs or listening to podcasts. Like, man, that's fascinating. What do we do this? So there's so much information in the air. But for me, I always kind of go back to, all right, you're your most successful when things are presented to you in a repeatable, expected fashion that you know what to expect, and then you just do it. Right. And then there's slight variations. Like I do the exact same swim workout every single week through 3 days in a row. Not all 3 days the same, but I had for the last 3 weeks and then going forward till Wisconsin 70.3, I'm going to do the exact same swim workout. I don't need to be stimulated. What I need to do is know what's coming and know how to feel so I can execute, because what that does, that kind of gives me a little bit of confidence, right? Because feeling prepared breeds confidence. Right. And so knowing what's coming, knowing what it feels like, knowing how to pace it, that helps you out. Right. And then you can actually see repeatable, positive outcomes. Like I've been doing the same type runs. Like, we talked earlier this week and you brought up a few minutes ago is I had this horrific run last Saturday. Few days before that, I had a great one. I went out Tuesday, I think of this, let's say Thursday. I went out Tuesday after we did our podcast. I had a great bike ride in the morning and then went out midday and fully expected to have like a really terrible run. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. It's on my schedule. I'm running the same run I did last week. And last week I was like, man, I had a really good result. I wonder how today is going to be. But I just went out there because it was middle of the day, not the morning. I was like, I'm just going to run the same route, see how I feel. Went out and ran. Actually ended up running faster than I did the previous week, but I knew what to expect. I knew what to feel at certain times. Funny story aside, I ran just about 5 miles. Around mile 3.5, I got stung by a bee in the tongue.
On the tongue?
On the tongue. Okay. I mean, I was breathing hard. Like I was running like a pretty solid like tempo pace for me. And I think my last click was like 6:55 mile. I'm coming around the corner. I don't have my phone with me. I'm on the greenway. And so I'm breathing through my mouth a lot. And all of a sudden I get this right in the mouth, bing. And then my tongue like immediately gets stung. And so I like take my hand. I'm still running. Take my hand out. I'm like shoving the bee out. And I'm like, oh my God, what if I'm going to have like this huge allergic reaction? And my tongue's going to swell up. My throat's going to close. I've got no phone. I'm in the kind of not middle of nowhere, but like strangers' houses. I'm huffing and puffing. I was like, all right, you got two choices here. Walk, play it safe, lower your heart rate. If anything bad's going to happen, at least you got your wits about you. Or you better run like hell, dude, and get back to civilization because you don't want to go out like this. And so I kept running and ran as fast as I could for what I had left. Ended up, still had a great run, but definitely suffered last little bit. And finally got home and I was like, man, I think I might need to pop some Benadryl just to play it safer because my lips are starting to like swell a little bit, but I made it back. Anyway, long story short is that I'm doing a whole lot of the same things over and over. Because what you do is you look back at the previous week and you're like, all right, I made that work last week. Same day, same time, similar workout. Let's do it again, right? And let's do it again. And then you put stacking in 1 week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And I'm looking at, Wisconsin. I'm like, all right, 3 weeks to 4 weeks. And I can do it 2 more weeks. And then you end up building this, and you look back and you're like, all right, 3.5, 4 weeks ago, I couldn't imagine swimming 3 days a week, riding 4 to 5 and running 4 to 5. I was barely running 4 or 5 days a week and just couldn't fathom how I was going to fit everything else in. Right. And instead of just kind of going with that, I was like, all right, what can I do to make it work? What do I have to do to make it work? How can I lower the bar, not from making things quote unquote easier, right, when you work out, but how can I remove obstacles and barriers to productivity? Right. And that's what I started with. Repeatable, no variety, know what to expect, things that you enjoy, and then just do it. And then you can do it again. You can stack it upon a stack, right? It's not about overcomplicating. It's about simplifying, right? There's already too many things and too many metrics. I mean, just this morning, I'm looking at Training Peaks. There's this new field. Training Peaks is allowing athletes to add about stress level and all this. I'm like, oh, great. Just one more thing for people to have to like overthink about to add to their Training Peaks calendar when you've got like, fueling and macros and HRV, and then now you got stress level and sleep and my workout. Well, I hit the lab button, 19 times. You're going to see 17 entries. Takes you like 7 minutes to scroll through one swim workout because they know how to use a lab button. You're like, wait a minute, this just seems like a lot, right here. And then you click over and I look on Strava and you see Christian Blumenfeld, the fastest, most talented, probably athlete on the planet right now in terms of triathlon, and he doesn't touch his watch when he swims. Doesn't touch it. Doesn't touch it for laps. Doesn't touch the pool. Doesn't touch in open water. It'll routinely say like 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 3 minutes, 12. And you're like, he's either taking a hot bath in a spring, right? Or he just doesn't care to touch. He just simplifies things. And we love to overcomplicate things. And we, especially triathletes, we confuse overcomplicating things with more, and more input with better likelihood of a good output. And that's just not the case. If you really want to have be successful, minimize things, make things predictable, do those first, and then figure out what happens. And if you need to tweak things, but don't just tweak things for the sake of satisfying your inability to stay focused when you're more likely just to be more distracted.
Man, congrats on making the podcast today. I mean, you don't get a bee sting to the tongue and recover like that. That's
you show up, baby. You just show up, stay humble, work hard, and show up, and hope your tongue isn't swelled up so you can speak.
Yeah, you sound good. I was actually hoping you'd say I was rolling around on the ground going, my tongue, out in the middle of nowhere. I was hoping for that story.
No, it didn't happen, dude. I was both motivated but also scared. I was like, man, I don't want to go down like this. I gotta go. I'm gonna hoof it back home and see what I can do.
Yeah. No, but I like what you said, man, about kind of keeping it simple. I mean, obviously that's my MO up and down. We can put different workouts in, and usually that's there for. I always talk about the integrity of the workout. Just go out and the idea of, hey, coach, my 13th 50 was a PR or whatever, that kind of stuff. I just like, man, it's all about if you start with 50s in the pool, or you just, I kind of like, I've always just sort of gravitated to 500s for some reason. And to me, it's sort of like a long enough thing, but you can still go kind of hard. And then I just sort of look at, am I in the ballpark? Do I feel better? Can I get through this whole workout and kind of sustain and maintain the pace and the effort and those kind of things, and whatever, it's a bike or whatever, I always encourage athletes, like, you see what's in front of you, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build strength, so go ride hills if you don't feel like doing that on the trainer or whatever the case may be, but just do what you feel like, man. And I wrote about this yesterday. I mean, really, this whole race for me would never have happened if I hadn't discovered those mountain bike trails up by our cottage. Mm-hmm. It was something that just was talking to me. Been a long time since I really did a lot of, trail mountain biking, and I started getting out there, and it just kind of lit a little bit of a fire, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm still trying to mix it in, and it's got nothing to do necessarily with a particular workout I have on a day, but I just like, for me, I think what I was saying earlier about being in the moment, mountain biking is exactly that. You can't really think about anything else because you'll crash or whatever.
Eat it. Yep.
Yeah. So to me, that's maybe the biggest benefit of it, other than, forcing you to really dig deep to get up some short pinchers and things like that. But yeah, where are you going to find the fun in it? Where are you going to find something that makes you feel good? And that's like, when you feel good, all this shit becomes a lot easier. And I was writing today about one of my favorite kind of mysteries in life is just transitioning from one thing to the other, and whether it be out of bed and getting up and going, or transitioning into, I can't remember if I wrote about it or we talked about last time, about how you got to get, you're a swimmer, and then you got to get out of the water and you got to transfer your head around. I think that's a lot of times what can be a challenging thing about life, is that there's so many different things pulling us now. Like with you got to be a dad for, part of the night, and then you got to go deal with athletes and text them and be in that kind of mindset. And then you got to work out, and then you got to think about what you're going to eat. And then you got all these other things going on with bills and, adult stuff. And it can be tricky, because I think to me, it's a skill, I guess, to be able to sort of shift your mindset into a different thing and then just invest in it in the moment. Because if you're still thinking about Ironman when you're over here watching your son's baseball game, that's it's a tricky, I think that's the cause on a lot of times of just being in funks, because we can't be where we're at,
The best athletes that, and again, like I reference best athletes a lot, and that means when I say best athletes that I work with, I mean the ones that get the most out of themselves from a performance standpoint with the time they have available, are ones that are able to be present 24/7. They aren't like you just said, if they're at a baseball game or at work or whatever, their mind isn't always on triathlon. It's just they do their work, they do their workout, they move on to the rest of their life, and because it's done, right? They don't let things fester or sit or stress about the next workout or overanalyze. They check the box and then they're finished. There's nothing, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it allows you to do is, like you said, be totally present, but also not put so much stock into one session. Do things that you enjoy, right? Like if you're in a funk, won't force an expectation. Just do things that you enjoy, right? Hop on a different bike, like you're talking about mountain biking. It was a similar kind of aha moment for me, but not with mountain bike trails. It was actually a trip to Costco.
Okay.
We moved back. One of the best
That can be
training groups
dicey.
I've ever been in was when we lived here before in Overland Park, and we would always go to this Costco, and I had it was probably some of the best shape I've ever been in my life. It's still like my half marathon PR. I won a few races. It was a few months before Hayden was born. Then I came up and did Ironman Wisconsin with you, and I went to Costco every week, and I started eating like the same thing. It wasn't a special diet. It was just stuff that was fairly healthy, but I'd prep my meals and get to work. And I was in the freezer section at Costco and glanced over and saw some turkey bacon. And seriously, I know this sounds like weird, but it brought me back, and I was like, wait a minute. 6 years ago, when you were here, you were doing the most simplest format you could possibly do to get fit and to get in good shape. And because you're working a job, Hayden was on the way, life was super stressful. Instead of overcomplicating things, you made things almost so predictable that it would have probably bored most people to death. But what it got out for me was for me a really, really good fitness. And I was like, it was like my turkey bacon aha moment. And I was like, why don't you just go back to that? So I did. It started with my food. I went straight back. I was like, you know what? That worked for me before. I wonder if it still works for me. Guess what? It still works for me. Repeatable, not much variety, but good enough. And I can make it quick and I can be done. And then we're right back to the same training. All right, what are you doing in training then? Well, you're doing this. Like we get so lost and we get so far away from things that work that we forget how well things worked. Right? Because new things are exciting. New things kind of keep us satiated, keep us energized until they don't. And then you move on to the next one. Move on to the next one. Move on to the next one. Always having these like giant ups and downs, right? This roller coaster effect, not just seeing same thing, the drill. We just keep working at it. If there's small tweaks here and there need to change, but other than that, you just do the deal. And, I've admittedly, and it's been chronicled, obviously, during the fact we do this podcast, I've taken quite a few breaks from triathlon the past, 4 or 5 years to just run or just survive or put things first and just kind of, undulate between being all in and being all the way out and just running and then kind of being in between. And it was like this one, it was, I know it sounds like crazy and funny, but like, it was the simplest thing. I was like, man, that was such a simple time. Oh, it was a simple time in my life. You made it simple, right? Because so many times in life, we overcomplicate things and make things so hard on ourselves voluntarily, right? Life is already, borderline impossible some days, with the amount of responsibilities you have. And if you've got kids and doing this and that, and you're like, man, you're exhausted from just life, right? Not even anything like just extravagant, just life. But we overcomplicate things by adding more things or committing to too many things and then we end up wondering why we keep failing, right? Or keep falling short. And I just needed that simple reminder and like the Wayback Machine that was like, man, let's just go back to that. And it's worked just as well as it did 6 years ago for me. And when I say work, I'm not assuming that this training block that's worked for me every time I've done it is like this magical training block. But what, is from a specific workout standpoint and physiological adaptations, what I'm saying is that the simplicity of the setup allows me to be successful, allows me to swim more, allows me to bike more, allows me to run more, and allows me to enjoy all of it more. And if I'm enjoying all of it more, I'm more likely to do them all, right? I'm not going to be more likely to skip a workout or to push one to another day or to take a day off. And so it's kind of one of those like chicken before the egg things. You're like, well, what can I said something similar yesterday in our Zoom call when talking about feeling like I was getting in a little bit better run shape. And, because you can't always take like apples to apples when it comes to training. You always have to have kind of context and feedback. And sometimes you don't even know. And I feel like I've been running decent here on some of the runs I've had the last few weeks. And so I'm like, all right, is it because this training is working? Or is it because, I've ran in a little bit cooler weather and I'm down 7 or 8 pounds? Well, it could 100% certainly be that, right? It could be the latter. It could be cooler temps and lighter weight. Could definitely be why you feel better running. Could be the workouts. Does it matter? No. Do I need to know the answer? No. I just need to know that I feel better running, right? But most people and triathletes specifically like to overcome. I need to know exactly what is happening here and I need the solution or I'm not going to be bought in. All I need to know is I feel good and I'm running and I feel better running. So what else do I need to know? Nothing. That's it. I don't need to know more. I just need to know that it's working. But I'm working for it and it's working for me. And I think that's a huge thing with athletes is to find a plan that works for them and then work the plan. And I know that phrase is used a lot, but that's what you have to do. You can't know if a plan is working if you don't work the plan. But that's sometimes you got to go back to scaling things down. Very, very minimal approach. Not the load me up coach way, which is, I think I've got a few extra days this week, load me up. Like we can't, you couldn't even unload yourself last week. Like you did one workout and now you want to load up this week. No, let's just kind of stick with what we got, set yourself up for success, because for most athletes, seeing this avalanche of consistency, creating positive momentum, because you're usually doing one of two things. You're creating positive momentum or you're putting the brakes on and creating negative momentum. Right. Yeah. There's really no in between. And so to see like constant momentum going forward is a huge bonus mentally and emotionally for most athletes.
One of the things I notice all the time with triathletes is that like that load 'em up coach thing, when people feel good, like they feel really good. It's like, we need more, man. This feeling good. I don't know about this thing. I need to feel, trashed, or I need to know that I'm pushing myself over the, you can read something in a Training Peaks that, man, this day was something else. I am just wiped out. And then it's like, okay, well, let's just chill it out tomorrow a little bit. And then they feel good and they're like, no, we want to go harder and harder. I mean, but like, why can't we just feel good, right? And I think a lot of what you were just saying about the diet and all that kind of stuff is, and not really caring about the, I guess, details or technology or science of the whole thing all the time, is it's going with the flow. You're like, this is working, sometimes, this may be a debatable or controversial thought, but I heard a long time ago, I think it was like a monk or something I was reading, and he was saying, food is for your body, not your mouth. And that kind of resonated with me, because I get it that, you start your chewing process in the mouth and it should taste good, and you don't want to eat crappy food all the time that doesn't taste good. But I think we adjust to that. And I'm like you, man. I just like food. I wish it was more of a auto bill pay thing for me, because, once that came around, it was like, because you remember we used to, I don't know if you're old enough, but you sit around with your checkbook and get the electric bill, and you'd send off a check, to the electric company and the gas company, and, all these, you'd have to sit down and I'm paying bills. And I know a lot of people still do that, but for me, that was a big weight off my shoulder. And same thing with the diet, right? It's like, I just want it to be simple. I don't need every meal to be like some kind of foodie dish, that I can, this cracks me up, man, about what's going on out there. It's like back in, it's like beer, everything has to have, a hint of cucumber and sawdust or something in it now, like, what is this? What is going on, man? You just want fuel. And, it kind of reminds me of, Steve Jobs, how he used to talk about, he just wore the same thing every day. He didn't have to think about it. It took like, for a lot of people, a big decision making out of your process. And I think that's one of the things that, when you say simplify your workouts and you just kind of go and get through it and do it instead of always wondering, why am I doing, this right in the middle of a workout? What is that going to do for me or whatever? Just like, I don't know, man. It's sort of trusting that other people have thought this through and gone through it and just going with that flow. I think I've said it before, most training plans that people probably buy are probably okay, because they've actually taken the time and researched it, hopefully, to put something down. And I don't know if they'll be the greatest or the worst or whatever, but if you stick with it and just, keep in the game the whole time and keep working hard. And I always say too is, I can put a workout in and I can't sit here and, make you go harder in this interval. That's always up to you. You have a range. Do you have more in you? I think a lot of times people do. That's one of the biggest things I hear is I just don't know if I'm going hard enough on the bike or whatever. And you got to feel that. You got to push that out there, and it's on your own, but it's the simplification of things is the way to go. My brother's a big simplifier. He throws away everything. I can't,
I'm right there with you.
But it's like, yeah, get rid of it. Get it out of your head, because it's just reminding you of things maybe that you should be doing or want to do or thought you wanted to do or whatever, and it confuses everything. So I like simple workouts. I like simple food. I always want to start a restaurant called Simple Bland Food.
Sign me up. I will be your most frequent customer.
Simple
I'm like, give
bland
me
food,
food repeatedly, and I'm in.
With a salt shaker on the counter, and that's it. But seriously, man, I mean, how far do we got to go with this shit? I think I'm going to have a fancy, ribeye with like a couscous dish of 87 sauces, in the size of a quarter, and it's going to be $50. And it looks really unbelievable.
There's a reason that the best steakhouses in America serve you a steak.
And a potato.
And maybe a potato. Sometimes it's just the steak. The rest you got to like order a la carte. And it's just a straight up steak. No, frou-frou sauce, just straight up, give me a ribeye, medium rare. If you don't order your ribeye, medium rare, you over, stop ordering ribeyes. Okay, get yourself a sirloin and don't do that to the ribeye. But no, it is. And we get this question a lot and I kind of went over it yesterday in our Zoom call was, how do you learn? What do you see from different blocks? You're like, well, you can only see something if the work was done. Right. If the work is done 60%, then what you see isn't from programming. What you see is a lack of completion, right? A lack of what you're doing, right? And you have to, but setting athletes up for success is such a huge part of coaching and figuring out, hey, Lynn, I know you said you had this much time, but you don't, right? I think I can string one more week together before we do a recovery week. Okay. Well, you're asking to injure yourself or to be, overtrained. Like you said, one more or more is not always better. It's just not, right? Because what are you going to get? The positives you might get from it are going to greatly outweigh the more likelihood of the negatives you're probably going to receive. And so when you're trying to get yourself out of a funk, when you're trying to feel your way back in, remove stress, simplify. I mean, listen, and we get not so much question anymore, but I'm sure when you and I both decided to make these big life changes, like, what are you doing? Like, you got those. And I was like, we're just trying to like remove stress and simplify our life. Right. And that's like everything kind of came full circle. Like, when you make changes, that seem, drastic, but they're really, to simplify your life is like when I think back to last year, Hayden was going to private kindergarten. It started at 7:45, so we had to leave the house at 7:20 to get in line to be in there at 7:45. Then you sit in line, then you drop him off at 8, then you come home at 8:10, 8:15, and to pick him up from school. You got to get in the car line. I'd leave the hub at like 2:30 to get ready to pick him up at 3, but at 2:30 the line's already backed up, so you're not picking him up till 3:15. Then you got to drive home. But yesterday I just walked out the door with a coffee cup in my hand and watched him walk to school with 10 other kids. Like the amount of like and school don't start till 8:45, which is brilliant.
Oh my God, that would have been a
So
really
now he's
good
sleeping later.
student.
Like, and so it's like, it's all these things that, like, when you make efforts to consciously do things to simplify your life, you'll become a lot more resilient, not because you just kind of, changed who you are, changed kind of the fabric of your character or your strengths, but in order to be resilient, to be motivated, to stay accountable, to be consistent, you got to have the energy and the bandwidth to do it. And most of the time, people, and to create more bandwidth, or when they have a lack thereof, they add more waves and chaos and noise. Like, yeah, I just can't seem to hear or see things clearly right now. I'm like, because are you kidding me? Like, your brain looks like a tie-dye t-shirt. Like, there is no clarity there. You're just adding shit to add shit. And you're rolling up. Oh, look at that's a beautiful t-shirt. Like, no, there's a reason why simplistic lives are the way to go. I think I read an article maybe a year or two ago from Ryan Holiday. He was talking about the power of eating at the same place every morning.
Mm.
And because it all came from the fact that this place closed. And he was like, I went to the same place. And I know you're kind of like this in a way too. Like, when you have that spot, when you have this thing that's predictable, right? You walk to your coffee shop, you get the same cup of coffee. They know your name. You might order the same thing. It might not seem like this complete, day changer or day maker, or, the reason behind, why billionaires are billionaires. But predictability is one of the most underrated things you will find, because it gives you this sense of comfort and control. And most of us live in the world of discomfort, anxiety, and spiraling out of control, because you don't have control over your life, either overcommitted, or you're afraid to dial things back because of whatever, or you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, or you're worried about what somebody might think, or you've got to do an Ironman this year because all your training buddies are doing an Ironman this year. Their life might, be able to handle that, and your life might not. But here you are, digging yourself into a hole, driving yourself in the ground, being miserable, just because you wanted to spend $800 on a race that you're miserable doing.
Yeah.
Simplify your life, remove the stress. And usually that starts with, like, not even addressing training, but addressing your life, right? Because if you want to have energy, you want to have time, you want to be able to train, you got to have energy and you got to have time. And if there's certain things or certain people or certain, types of media that are taken away from that, then address it, because a lot of it we have a choice to do. Like, you and I get, have conversations all the time with athletes, like, man, this is kind of changing, my life. It's making things, so much more, enjoyable. And I'm doing things where I thought I could do. It's got nothing to do. Like, I got a text yesterday, and started off and said, I'm quitting my job this morning. You
Nice.
played a role in it. Smiley face. Unload stress, in quotes. I got an awesome new gig and I'll start in September. It's a huge career move. Our work together goes well beyond triathlon. I can't thank you enough. Like, but that's the opposite, right? It's like, how many things can I take on right now to be more busy? And when you're too busy, you're really never accomplishing anything. You're just trying not to fail. And that's a huge difference in mentality.
Congrats on that. I like that, man. Just make a move. The simple, you know what that reminds me of is that let's try some new restaurants. Or remember back in the day when we used to sit out at, I guess it was Three Crow, or we'd have a good group of people there just hanging out, talking, having good conversation. It really feels good. Hey, let's go somewhere else. And then you go and it sucks. It's like, how many times you gotta, variety, what's your quote? Varieties for the week.
Varieties for the week.
Yeah. No, I like that, man, because I'm that way. Like, exactly. I have this little place I go to most mornings here, and I'll just sit there, order the same breakfast, and just kind of feel comfortable, and not like you have to, there's so many things to explore, right? We talked about this before too, but everybody wants to be, a painter, and they can fix their own plumbing, and they can do their roof, and they can add on a thing. And it's like, how many things can we do, man? And we get so deep, and I think the complications sometimes of training is you hear about all these different things that are working for other people, but they're just all looking for an angle, It's like, just kind of stick with the basics. Use it as a tool, kind of like I was saying about food. You know, food is for the body, training is for the body. It doesn't have to be always, you know, for the excitement quotient of your life. It can just feel good. That's simple.
And simple is good. And simple usually means faster too, because you're more likely to do it. And it's in, like you said, there's so much information and so many people can, and then I think that's one of like the biggest things that we get confused about is that people will pretty much always say, yeah, you can't really believe everything you read on the internet or on Facebook. It's totally fake. But then in the same breath, they're like, hey, I saw so-and-so post that they did this, and I think that might work for me. And you're like, wait a minute. Can we stick to the same script here? Because I'm not really sure what we're following. It's very similar to, I think, the stock that we put in unfaithfully, but still faithfully, you know, with the weatherman. The weatherman is never right, ever. They're always wrong. What a shit job like that you got to be a weatherman. What do you do every day? Check the freaking weather. 2 weeks out from a race, you're like, forecast, 30% chance of storms, coach. Like, what should I do? I mean, no, like, you know, you think it's gonna be canceled? And I'm like, wait a minute.
I know.
Wait 1 second. Like, but that's what we do. Like, we're like, how many? And I tell athletes all the time, I'm like, every time you open your phone, you're looking for a distraction. And if you're looking for a distraction, you're opening up your world to chaos and confusion and anxiety and, you know, worry. Oh, just don't pick up your fucking phone, right? Go do something else. Go mow the lawn, go pull weeds, go for a walk, take your dog out, you know, sit on the couch and just meditate or relax for a minute, take a nap, you know, respond to somebody, reach out to a friend, make a call. Like, we make all these are conscious decisions, all of them. And we have a hard time, you know, not complicating our life for some reason, you know, and just kind of sticking to what is going to be, you know, allow us the least level of stress. And it's like, it's again, like, you know, if you're in a funk, and hopefully this podcast has been helpful in some ways, is like, simplify things, right? And that honestly, that's one of the biggest reasons people reach out to us for coaching is not to complicate their life. It's to remove stress. Like, I don't know what to do. I bought 19 different plans online and I've got triathlete magazine articles printed out, and I'm so confused, and I took 2 days off. Now I'm off the plan and I don't really know what to do. And you're like, all right, let's just set you for a session. And you're like, oh, this is great. Like, it's so much, I'm not having to stress about it. It's easier. It's, you know, it's a decipher. It's not as complicated. It's pretty predictable. Now I can actually do it. Right. So a lot of the magic in the training that we do isn't from some like special formula or, you know, special, you know, secret workouts. It's providing the best opportunity for you to accomplish your goal in a clear and predictable way that's not, you know, too demanding, that doesn't crush at your soul, but allows you to be happy and healthy along the way. Yeah. And hopefully you can do it for yourself. If you can't do coaching or you don't want coaching, then at least make that a priority, you know, for yourself to remind yourself of that. And if you're overcomplicating things, you are stressing yourself out. Right. I always kind of key on that with athletes. They're like, I'm so stressed right now about that. I'm like, are you stressed? Are you generally being stressed out about it? Or are you stressing yourself out about it? Because that's a choice, because you don't have to do that. But for some reason, you know, I think human beings are now wired to seek out stress and things that make them anxious versus the opposite.
Quickly, I don't know if it's in AA recovery, but in adult children, I used to go to these meetings, and one of the tenets was we became addicted to excitement. And that one really hits home, because, you know, in a chaotic home, you know, you're kind of always drawn towards, you know, keeping things interesting and like drama and all that shit. And I think that's what's happening. And, you know, now is with everything that's going on in the world and the internet, and we have like shit going, everybody's like excited all the time, like this, pissed off about everything. So I wonder if a lot of us has just become kind of quote unquote addicted to the excitement, when, you know, I met a guy a couple of weeks ago up at the cottage, and he told me he's been through a lot of rough times, and he went bankrupt and he had lost his money, whatever. Now his thing right now. He goes, hey, the only thing I'm addicted to saving money. And I just like, that is really kind of crazy. He goes, yeah, I just don't spend money anymore. It's kind of like my addiction. I'm like, I feel like buying that, but you know what? I'm going to put this money in the bank. And I just thought that was really interesting. So it's almost like find a way to be addicted to simple.
Yeah, that's a good addiction to have. It's the opposite of what most people have.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
all right.
We hope that is at least somewhat helpful in getting you out of your funk. We love you guys. We hope you have an amazing training weekend and a racing weekend. And just generally, if you're not doing either, you're not training or racing, you're at least being proactive and trying to find your way. Because you're never going to find your way by sitting on the couch. Get out and do something, move, take a walk, do something, that's not for yourself. And just try to find a way, do an inventory, of your life and see what you can shed. It's not about, just adding things to add things or, adding in what things you might, think are exciting, find things that are fulfilling, right? Because usually that means less. Because you can be present, you can put more work in and enjoy it. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you are looking for coaching for the rest of the year or just a coach in general, help guide your way or remove stress from your life and your training and unlock some performance, click on our coaching tab and peruse through a roster of coaches. If you need anything from Mike, he's always available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. Keep it simple, man.
Let's do it.
All right. See you later.